being part of that, and sorry for losing some time with the technological challenges early on. So let me shut up here, stop, and listen to you guys.
Yes, thank you, Otto. So this was it was like an amazing piece of thoughts and sharing that you are giving. While Karen is still, I think, having a look at the chat, I just try to a little bit wrap up. So we heard about mindfulness and about the importance of paying attention. It was empathy, compassion, courage that Otto picked up. And I think it was amazing also that we had the link to our last webinar with Peter Sanger at different points, because Peter told us about that threshold that we have to cross as leaders and about all this, but Otto was even exploring a little bit more. What does it actually mean? Kind of dying, letting go, step into the unknown, and doing things that we normally avoid. So I think I would like to hand over to Karen to find out, Karen, what do you think? I mean, while we have watched the chat, from your point of view, what were the...
Thank you, Klaus. There have been lots of amazing questions. I just start, I can really start randomly. And one comes from India, from Indonesia, saying people's leadership journeys are different from person to person. So what is the main influence of the difference of the leadership journeys for each of us individually? Is there, yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, the leadership journeys are different, and that's exactly what makes it interesting kind of early on. I think you framed it in your journey as external learning journeys or something, or paying attention to the outside. I mean, in reality, kind of this whole first stage of the process is the dialogue between the outer and the inner. So it's because we are so different that makes it so interesting to be guests in each other's lives, to witness, to shadow each other, to learn to see the system through the eyes of another stakeholder and another partner in the system. So yes, there are all these differences. However, I also found, I'm not sure it's actually true for all of you. I mean, I would be interested in that, but you know, my teachers, kind of, I grew up like in a postmodern intellectual world, kind of basically proposing, well, you know, there's really not that much you can do, kind of, you know, across all these different cultures and differences and so on, and there's no way you can really understand, and you know, across context and so on. And while I appreciate that to some degree intellectually, that was not my experience. My experience is that throughout all of these, you go through these differences and you acknowledge them, and then, like a miracle, kind of some deeper aspect of our own humanity is opening up that is, in fact, quite universal. And where you have a really direct understanding, where you feel a direct connection to, yes, people from other cultures, and yes, there is an element of unknown, but there's also a real element of connection and knowing across all these boundaries there. So I just found that, so whenever you take a group of very diverse stakeholders, it's not only cultural diversity, but it's also different interests. Kind of, you represent that interest, your organization, mine, something different, industry against NGO, and so forth. So they are still there. These differences are still there. But then this stuff is dropping. You connect on a deeper level of humanity, where all of these differences suddenly are very, very small and insignificant, frankly, about what really counts in our life, in our work. And I just found that fascinating to watch that, and to watch these connections, really, how these deeper connections make all these other differences really look small. And that has been my experience. I don't know what you guys think.
Thank you. Well, I think there is another question or thought coming from the chat, which like might be a nice connection here. Alex is saying, like, I thought most leaders learn not to work empathetic towards their everyday life, to ignore these sensors and to think only rational. So maybe this is the main picture we had so far. Like, this is also something they share, but it's like coming socialized, shared from the outside world. But now to focus on the inner, there might be something deeper that connects them anyway. But now I see many discussions going on in the chat.
Let me just comment on that.
Yeah.
Let me just comment on this observation on empathy. I think that's absolutely true, what you say. And there is research that shows that the empathy among college students in the US has been going down significantly. So it's shocking. And why is that? Because we are stuck, we don't know in fact, but probably one factor is we are stuck in all knowing too much and too little, too much surface, and connecting only with distant technologies, and in a way that is not accessing the deeper levels of knowing. So we know that there's a lot of trends going on in the world that keeps us away from really engaging with the deeper levels with the deeper aspects of the social field that which go beyond the open mind, that deal with the open heart and the open will, or with compassion and courage and so forth. But so what I see is this. Yes, there are all these trends that pull us away from that, and some of the research shows how that this is a really problematic feature of current reality. And at the same time, I also could cite many examples where whenever you create these avenues, particularly in the field of leadership, so what is the nature of leadership challenges today? It's a network leadership challenge. What is the essence of a network leadership challenge? It is to be successful in my job, I need to change the behavior of other stakeholders that I cannot control through hierarchy. I need to make them change, but I can't use hierarchy for making it happen. So what am I left with? I'm left with the quality of my relationship, the quality of my listening, the quality. That's the mechanism that I can use to to affect the changes that I need to make happen to be successful. That's the reality for many people today. And that's why when you work on a leadership level, on these network, new types of leadership challenges that are universal, really, across all sectors, across all major businesses, then you have a logical gateway from, okay, this is my challenge, and therefore we need to look at ourselves. I need to work on my own listening, on my own dialogue skills, because that's really what I need to affect change in this new type of leadership environment. So what I'm saying here is that there is not only an aspiration and the new generation of leaders to be more authentic, to connect to these deeper levels of empathy and so on. There's a genuine openness for that. There is also a necessity. There are new type of leadership challenges that also make it functional in the categories, in terms of the old systems that we operate in. And where these inner and these outer forces come together, that's where we can see real change. So I also see that, but I agree. Research shows that empathy is going down. And that's exactly what's going on in current reality right now. So it could go that way, or it could go another way. And there is no necessity from outside that determines where we are going with the world. It depends on us. That's the that's the amazing thing in our age. How much really depends on us. And it's not determined by world history or this or that. It really is kind of, do we get our act together, yes or no? And kind of how do we really kind of connect with who we really are? And I think, so I'm really inspired by being part of a time, being alive on Earth right now. Because never before were the stakes so high. And never before, I also think, we have been in an era of disruptive change where effectively very few of us, if we pull together in the right way, could have a major positive impact generations down the road. And that's, I think, what I'm sure many of us brings into this journey here and into this work. And, well, I'm just kind of sharing my angle of that.
Wow, thank you very much. I would like to give the mic to Klaus and find out in the chat if there is another last question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think there is another stream of what I recognize in the chat going on. As you say, Otto, it depends on us, and there is a stream in the chat revolving around our individual leadership journeys, and also, does it have to do with storytelling? What about new narratives? There was Dirk Messner today in another webinar who said there is a need for a new narrative, a new need for a we identity. This is crucial for change, and you are also talking about coming from the me to the we, from the ego to the eco. And in our programs, we also see that storytelling and sharing stories of hope, stories of change, is an important thing. So can you tell us something about that? What do you think about it, Otto?
Well, I completely agree with that. And so the I had a coaching session with a good friend the other day, and he was talking, I'm listening to him, he's listening to me, and we usually find out that we're dealing with similar issues and so on. And he described something that so much nailed also my own situation, I think the situation for us as a movement. So he reported about somebody who gave feedback to him. He said, well, you have a language, you have a shared language, but you don't have a shared narrative. And that's also true for where I'm operating. And I think it's also true for the larger movement. I think we are part of. Every one of us in this MOOC is being part of. But it's like a movement that's dormant, it's not activated yet. And part of that is what you said, Klaus. I agree, kind of, it's what Dirk said. So it's the missing narrative. So I think we have bits and pieces of that, but developing that narrative and kind of really creating that narrative in a way that it really links to all the different strands and streams that are kind of now flowing into this larger river of this movement. We are coming from very different angles and parts of the world and the context. So what is really that meta-narrative that brings all these different aspects together? I think that's a very good point. And in my view, kind of this narrative needs a very strong cultural bend, but also a very strong economic bend, because at the end of the day, many of the problems that we have are created by an underlying economic system that is a little bit out of sync, kind of, that hasn't been updated in a while. And somehow that needs to be part of the narrative, and that's at least an area where I try to contribute. But I completely agree, and that's maybe one of the wonderful challenges and opportunities we have to spell out that narrative more.
Yeah, thank you, Otto. So this is, I mean, also to frame that this is actually, I mean, what we can do also in this MOOC. I mean, it's like we meet in peer groups, and we have the opportunity actually, I mean, to connect and to dialogue. and to develop our stories, to share our stories. So we are somehow in the middle of that all. So Karen, in the meantime, what have you seen in the chat? You were a minute ago. You were thinking about another question. Is there something that you would like to share with us? Okay, Karen. So let's have a look at the chat. So Patrick is saying, leadership is a calling to serve. Who is the boss in this context? Again, we succeed in discussing this topic while avoiding the issue of higher power. So what can we say about that?
Who is the boss in this story that we talk about?
Yeah,
That's a question.
Sorry, I lost the line. The chat is moving so fast. It's
Yeah. All right. I can play on that. I also need a little like indication from you, kind of how much time we have still available. So on this boss thing, well, two things. All leadership is people just paying attention to their bosses, right? Too much and really ignoring everything else. That's what we learned. That's kind of the old system that no longer works. Two, all the bigger challenges in society that we face, health, education, sustainability, and on and on and on, do not have that boss. That's the problem. We have like all the bosses in our existing institutions looking in the wrong direction, looking basically to their targets, but not to what does this larger ecosystem require us to do. And that's why I find myself, the kind of work I'm doing is I create like learning environments kind of for people across all these system boundaries where they more engage laterally, kind of where it's okay, we have these bosses, and yes, they need to be involved, but in particular, we need to kind of include kind of this larger systems complexity, the larger ecosystem of the problem I'm dealing with. And interestingly, there's no single boss for that. It's not government. It used to be maybe a few centuries ago. Not in modern society. It's not government. It's like everyone is holding bits and pieces across the three sectors. And that's a literacy that we need to develop. How to, create kind of these spheres of sense-making and innovation where kind of government, civil society, and business are coming together. And so if I would, just maybe also looking at the bigger picture, and also coming back to the narrative remark that you asked before, Klaus, I would say kind of whatever the narrative is, really, I think the bigger challenge that we face is today that we need to reinvent business, we need to reinvent government and democracy, and we need to reinvent learning and education in a way that actually flips the pyramid, right? So old style leadership is, you just pay attention upwards because that's where the knowledge and the guidance is. The new reality is that's not good enough. So the flip pyramid really is that the attention is no longer moving to the boss, but it's moving into the actual ecosystem you're dealing with, the frontline people, the other stakeholders, the larger systems, what's necessary. And then your boss becomes one of the stakeholders, and you need to bring your boss on board, of course. But it's no longer good enough just delivering on these targets. That's only workable if you have a very stable environment and if you do not deal with disruptive change. But as a world, as a global system, we have moved into a period of disruptive change. So all these good old habits that are still successful inside organizations are pretty dysfunctional for most of the larger systems we are working with, which is exactly why we need a new leadership, and why we need to shift the attention kind of from these interior stuff to the realities of the system, and kind of then also inquire into them by bringing in kind of the deeper aspects of our own experience, kind of the deeper, as relational capacities, kind of that in theory I refer to as open heart and open will, but that can be also referred to in other frameworks with different terms. So that's what I believe, and so to me, kind of the the bigger picture narrative somehow needs to deal with reinventing business and capitalism, reinventing democracy kind of towards more direct, distributed, more dialogic, and also kind of reinventing the way we learn, kind of out of the classroom and into the real world. A little bit kind of what we try to make some baby steps into maybe through this MOOC. And I'm very much, interested in that, and I see like the MOOCs kind of. So we are just taking first baby steps, but this is kind of using this MOOCs as a platform for global movement building, global, local, personal movement building that can give radically democratize the access to education, not only kind of the old cognitive stuff, but really kind of the stuff that deals with awakening the deeper aspects of our own entrepreneurship. That's really powerful. And I believe the one thing that really can change the world, like feeling-wise, if I speak from that, would be to link the power of entrepreneurship with the power of the open heart, with the power of compassion. And kind of if we can bring these two things together, I think it can go a long way.
Sorry, this seems very much to be linked with, there is another like a stream in the chat, Barbara for example, that seems to resonate a lot with people. She asked already relatively early in the chat, do you think it is possible to establish an ecosystem based on profit-oriented business? Is that possible?
Well, there's I don't have any problems with profit. I think like profit is like oxygen. We need some of that to run a healthy business. That's not the problem. Kind of profit is not the problem. The problem is that kind of through the way we think and design our capital and our financial systems, we have a built-in imbalance, which is basically discounting all the other rationalities. And is kind of building in like an unfair competition, you could say, between the financial sector and everyone else. And so that's the problem. The problem is kind of how we think about capital and money. And yes, that without kind of basically reinventing Wall Street and putting the financial industry into the service of Main Street, rather than extracting, the value that other people create kind of into that ever-growing financial bubble. That's very much at the root. But I don't think it's really the profit is the problem. So there's no problem with entrepreneurs, creating profit, reinvesting that. The problem is with the larger financial system and how it's being designed and how we think about money and capital. That's the problem. And then kind of that thinking is at the root of designing institutions that create results that basically screw out democracy, kind of look at kind of who owns the political process with the lobbying. It screws up kind of our environment, kind of we operate on 1.5 Earth, and so on and so on. I don't need to tell you, you all know that. The problem is not entrepreneurship and profit. The problem is how the bigger system is designed, and that it's kind of out of work, out of sync with the larger systemic imperatives that we face as a global community today. So it can be solved, very much so, but we need to rethink the key categories of economic thought. That's the problem.
Oh, now it's up to me. I accidentally got the microphone. Thank you very much. We got so many wonderful, inspiring questions in the chat so that we could actually move on for hours, but our time, like, is over. So also, thank you very, very much for your inspirations and great ideas, and also the participants for exchanging lots of great ideas in the chat, even though we couldn't hear them all. We will also keep them on the MOOC so that we can come back to them. And I will try to hand over now to Klaus for the closing. Yeah, the microphones are very surprising this time.
Yeah, it's a little bit funny with the technique today. But before we're talking about that, I mean, I want to thank all of the participants in this webinar, and of course Otto. But I think again it was the community of the people. It was the we who what made the difference in the session. And I think we could see from what was going on in the chat and how it was possible to relate, Otto relating to the chat responding to Otto. We could see that it is possible to connect. And the rest, I would say, is in the MOOC and is in what we do. I mean, at the end also the MOOC is only a tool, an online leadership journey that we are offering. At the end of the day, I mean, we all act in our contacts, in our jobs, in our communities. So we can use this MOOC to share and to dialogue on our leadership challenges and what we can do to make a difference and how to come to a we and an eco, more oriented system. And we can share that in the MOOC, and we can apply and implement it later in our contacts. So Otto, thank you very much again for being with us. I apologize for the technical problems today. It was really a limited challenge, I think, for all of us. Otto had to be very patient, and all your participants had to be patient. But I must say I'm happy that finally we got it solved. I also want really to thank for the people who are working in the background and try to make a technique work. And if it does not work, I think it is another good example that this is real life what we are doing. It's like real life, and sometimes you have to improvise, and sometimes you also have to be a little patient, and then finally things fall into place. So I think it was an amazing session.
I can't hear you,
Thank you.
Klaus. You're cutting out. So I just want to also say thank you very much. Great to being connecting with this global community, and happy to follow up in other ways after the class. Thanks a lot. I can't hear things. We are ending exactly how we started. Technology issues. That's the world we live in. Thank you for hanging in there with us.
Yeah, thank you, Otto. Thanks a lot. We heard you, and we are looking forward to continuing the MOOC or wherever we have the opportunity to work on our leadership journeys. Thank you, and goodbye to everyone.
Yeah, thanks to everybody also from my side. And yeah, it was a great session. Bye.
Hallo.
Hey.
Ja, hallo, wer ruft an?
Ich bin's doch, Klaus.
Ah,
Otto, du bist doch
ja.
angeschaltet auf dem Raum. Hast du eine Möglichkeit, deine... So, da bin ich wieder. Otto, hörst du mich?
Ja, ich höre dich, aber du hast nicht gesprochen. Hast du die Möglichkeit?
Ja, ich habe aufgehört, weil wir hatten wirklich ein technisches Problem. Ich ausgestellt in Saba und habe dich angerufen, aber dann kam heute eine Kollegin rein und sagte mir, dass ich offensichtlich auch noch online war. Das ist wirklich heute. Ich muss dich gleich nochmal anrufen, Otto. Ich bin offensichtlich noch zu hören, obwohl alles ausgeschaltet ist. Ich rufe gleich nochmal zurück.